This is Histories and Mysteries, and I am one of your hosts, Ashley Fleming, and this is...
Jessica Thompson.
This is what you're supposed to say, and on today's
Oh.
episode, we're going to talk about...
I forgot.
I was just waiting, I'm like...
I'm like, why isn't she talking? Okay.
let's try that again. Ready?
So
Oh,
you're talking
okay.
about the Salem witch trials?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay. This is Histories and Mysteries, and I'm one of your hosts, Ashley Fleming, and this is my other host,
Jessica Thompson. And on today's episode, Ashley will be talking about the Salem witch trials, while I will be talking about the lovely Cleopatra.
I'm super excited for yours because I don't know a ton about Cleopatra. Like, I know that she was a pharaoh?
Yeah, she was just a queen. Like, she
A
was just
queen.
a co-regent, essentially. So,
Gotcha. So
yeah.
I'm very excited to learn about her.
She's pretty great. I like her.
Yeah. Alright, so straight up my sources I want to talk about. There's this really cool site called Factinate, and it had like 42 facts you didn't know about Salem. So that was pretty cool. My tried and true history.com, Wikipedia, and also PBS.com, brought to you by viewers like you.
Yay.
Alright, so if you remember last week, I left off talking about kind of the fear of witches and how it got so out of control, and then bringing that over to America. And I left talking about the colony Jamestown that was founded. And Jamestown and Salem were founded around the same time. And there was kind of two big differences between them. And I think these differences are the reasons why Salem became such a witch crazy town, whereas Jamestown didn't. You didn't really hear about many in Jamestown. And one of the reasons is because Jamestown settlers were coming over with the hopes of making money by finding gold or Northwest Passage and then going back to Europe with their newfound money. Whereas Salem settlers were escaping religious persecution and hoping to establish their own religious community. So they were a lot more religious, a lot more into religion, which, as we learned last time, is kind of like what spawned the whole witch trial. And also, Jamestown was first settled by all men. There wasn't a woman settler in Jamestown until 1619, and the Salem colony was settled by families, so there was women and children. Now, 1619 is quite a few years before the witch trial happened, but I just think it's interesting to note, that it was mostly men and not the women, and can't have witches without women, so.
And of course, everything goes wrong when you have men leading. Looking at you, America. Sorry, you can take that out.
I can't even say anything to that because it's so true.
Sorry.
Oh, goodness. I mean, technically, there's also a man leading Canada, but we all know how I feel about
God.
Hottie McHottie. God, he's gorgeous. Anyway, so in fact, Salem was so religious and so anti-pagan that in 1659, they banned the celebration of Christmas because they thought that the act of gift giving took away from religious worship, and they didn't like the kind of pagan roots that it had.
That's rude.
I know, I love Christmas.
Yeah, it's such a nice holiday, especially for kids. Like, that's an
Yeah.
exciting time for them. Don't
It's
take that away.
magical, and yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, so I mean, as you can see, they were really, really religious. So this was in 1659. But it wasn't until 1692 that the hysteria started to take hold of the people of Salem, Massachusetts. And it all started with one kind-hearted slave named Tituba. And I'm sure you've heard of Tituba from The Crucible.
She's pretty great.
She is pretty great. She was
like
dealt a real bad hand.
Yes, she was.
So Tituba was enslaved as a really young child in Barbados, and eventually she was purchased, or I like to say kidnapped, by Samuel Parris, who was the preacher of Salem, the Puritan preacher. And as a teenager, he took her back to Salem and she cared for his two daughters. And while there, she married John Indian, another slave, and she had a daughter of her own named Violet.
That's a pretty name.
Yeah, I thought so too. One day, years later, when the Paris girls were older, they were playing an egg white fortune teller game. So in this game, you would pour egg whites into a glass of water, and the shape it would take could tell you about your future husband or your future life. Just some fun little kid game. And one of the girls saw a coffin and started to freak out. She started barking, crying hysterically, and babbling. Tituba, growing up in Barbados, knew a little bit about voodoo, and she tried to help the girls by creating what's called a witch cake, which you create from rye meal and the urine of the victim. And you bake it, and the thought was that you would feed it to a witch's familiar. In this case, she fed it to a dog, their dog, and then they would come under a spell and reveal who the witch was that was cursing that person. Obviously, this didn't work. And paired with the stories of voodoo that Tituba regaled the children of while they were growing up, this made her the perfect target of witchcraft.
Of course it did. A
Yeah.
woman trying to help?
What?
The, oh my goodness, I forgot the word. It's a travesty. Oh man, that's not
So,
good.
Paris knew that there was only one way to get a true and not at all coerced confession, and that was to beat her.
Oh,
So poor Tituba was beaten until she confessed to witchcraft. She was arrested along with Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne, both of which were kind of living outside the norms of society. Sarah Good was a poor, kind of walked the streets and owed many debts, which didn't make her popular. And Sarah Osborne was in the middle of a feud with her and her late husband's children over his estate, and she had also had an affair with an indentured servant, so, a witch.
yep.
The girls had probably seen these women in town and heard the gossip, and they probably had a little bit of fear of them, being kind of the outcasts of society, which caused them to accuse these women. Now, I found a couple different sources which said one said that the girls accused them, and one said that Tituba accused them when she was being beaten. So I'm not really sure which one it was. Either way, it makes sense why they were accused. Tituba confessed also to signing a pact with the devil and riding in on brooms. She also said that a large black dog told her to hurt the children. So this confession and this arrest of the Sarahs, I'm just gonna call them the Sarahs, like the Heathers, um, kind of is what started this mass hysteria in Salem. This is when they started to believe that there was trouble afoot and the devil was there to, coerce these women into doing his bidding. So Tituba was thrown in jail, where she stayed for over a year as Paris refused to pay her bail. After 13 months in jail, an anonymous person paid her bill, and unfortunately, no one knows what happened to Tituba after that. I mean, she was a former slave with no money and no property, so we can only hope she was able to find work, but odds are she probably didn't fare very well after that. But she thankfully wasn't executed, unlike others who were not so lucky.
I find it weird that she sat in jail for so long and they didn't do anything, right?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know why she was not executed like the other women were. Yeah, it didn't really say, and I'm not really sure why they would do that. But on a side note, her daughter Violet remained working in the Paris home until she died. So at least her daughter was not homeless.
And taken care of essentially.
As much as
one can be in that
Yeah,
position.
exactly.
But like you said, at least she still had a roof over her head and
Yeah,
hopefully it was being fed and
yeah, exactly. Whereas Tituba, who knows what happened to her. And I do know that after this whole hysteria ended, the government released, which I'm going to talk about later, these people that were accused, and they paid them some reparations based either on money or property. But since she was a slave, she didn't get anything.
that's baloney.
Yeah. So
I don't
I like to think that she found another job with a nice family as like not a slave anymore, but in reality that she probably didn't have a great life.
know. Poor girl.
Yeah. While on trial, the girls were screaming and convulsing, um, furthering the suspicion of Tituba, Osborne, and Good. So Osborne and Good refused to confess, and because of this, Sarah Good was hanged, and Osborne died in jail before they could execute her. She was 49, and at that time, that was pretty old, so she was kind of elderly and sickly anyway. And the jails back then were not good, so she unfortunately died in jail.
That's
Um,
sad.
yeah. And during this trial, several other women were being accused of witchcraft and arrested. Three of the most surprising women accused were Martha Corey and Rebecca Nurse, who were upstanding members of the church and community. And this is just Sarah Good's 4-year-old daughter was accused.
No.
Yeah. So
Why?
they arrested her daughter, and she was in prison for 7 months. Eventually, she was released on bond, so she was about 5 at this time. And Sarah Good's other daughter, an infant, died in prison with her. So both of Sarah Good's daughters had some, you know, impact by this. One died in prison with her, one was in jail for 7 months. Now, this is one of the sadder stories of this, but Sarah Good's child that was in prison, the 4 to 5 year old, her name was Dorcas, and she, once they let her out of jail, they didn't really do anything with her. Like, I mean, obviously at the time there wasn't like a CPS or foster care or anything like that. And so they just basically released this 5-year-old out to the streets. Um, Her mother was dead, father wasn't in the picture. So she wandered the streets of Salem until she passed away at the age of 16.
No.
Yeah.
That poor girl.
I mean, can you imagine a 5-year-old trying to live on the streets? And what citizen saw her and didn't take her in?
I know. That's the worst part is that back then they probably thought her like a leper, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of who her mother was and the fact
Mhm.
that, she was accused and
Yeah.
so it's horrible.
That one really got to me. That poor little 5-year-old. And she died at 16. Like, that was her life, you
Yeah.
know? So many women were being accused, and it became a strain on the court system because they had so many accusations.
Yuck.
So, in May of 1692, the governor of Massachusetts created a special court of oyer, which was to hear the cases, and a special court of terminer, which was to decide the court cases. And the first woman executed by this court, and actually the first woman executed in the Salem witchcraft trials, was Bridget Bishop. So Sarah Good, who we had just talked about, she was executed, but after Bridget Bishop. I don't know why Bridget Bishop got pushed to the front of the line, but she did.
Hmm.
She was accused by 5 young women, and then several other people after that came forward and started accusing Bridget Bishop. So she was the very first woman to be executed in the Salem witch trials. One of the more gruesome deaths was that of Giles Corey. So this was a
Yes.
guy. Yeah, you've heard of
Yes.
him?
Oh yeah, like we went to the Salem Witch Museum
Mm-hmm.
when we were visiting Salem and it explained all of these deaths and they they kind of showed his death, but like with these animatronics. It was really cool.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, so both he and his wife were accused, but he refused to enter a plea. He wouldn't say if he was guilty or not. And one of the reasons I saw for this had something to do with the way the law was stated. If he didn't enter a plea, his estate was safe. They couldn't take it. So to get him to enter a plea, he was pressed, which is where they add rocks and heavy boards on a man until he's basically crushed or he makes a plea. And each time he was asked to plea, he just said more weight. So he's kind of a badass.
Yeah, he was.
At one point, the sheriff who was conducting this torture stood on top of the rocks and boards on top of him and said that Corey's tongue was like squeezed out of his mouth because he was pressed down so much and he shoved it back in.
Ugh,
Yeah.
gross.
Yeah. So after that, the public opinion of the witchcraft trials started to kind of turn negative. People were not a fan of that torture. It really affected them. And Cotton Mather, who was I believe one of the judges, and his dad, Increase Mather, spoke out about testimony that they were using. They were allowing dreams and visions to be evidence.
What?
Yeah,
That's
and
so ridiculous.
oh, I know. And so Increase Mather said, quote, standards of evidence for witchcraft must be equal to those for any other crime, concluding that it would be better that 10 suspected witches may escape than one innocent person be condemned.
Oh
Which,
my goodness.
I mean, that ship has kind of sailed there, but it's a good thing he eventually
Yeah.
came to that conclusion, right?
Yeah.
So after that, hit their kind of thought on that and the murder of Giles Corey, the governor of Massachusetts decided to dissolve the court of Oyer and Terminer and no longer allow evidence of visions or dreams.
Perfect. Finally a smart man.
Exactly. So after that, the trials began to dwindle, and by early 1693, all of those in prison for witchcraft were released. So if you remember, this started in the spring of 1692 and ended by early 1693. So all of this happened in less than a year,
Yeah, that's
which is crazy to
insane.
me.
Yeah, because Bridget was executed in 1692,
Hmm.
like pretty early on, I think. But yeah, no, that's crazy.
Yeah. So all in all, 25 people died, 20 were executed, 5 died in prison, 2 of which were babies, so one being Sarah Good's baby. And one was a
Oh,
6-year-old. So a different 6-year-old.
oh,
Yeah. Um,
just because she probably didn't go to bed when she was asked to. What a
probably.
poor little baby.
So one of the weird things is of all the people that were accused and condemned of witchcraft, 2 were dogs.
What?
Yes. So one dog was accused by a young girl in October of 1962. She said that the neighbor's dog had bewitched her and the dog was shot on sight, only after being proclaimed as innocent. So it was thought that since the dog died, he could not have been the devil, so he was innocent.
What a brat.
Around the same time, another dog in the town started acting strangely, and several afflicted girls, I say afflicted with air quotes, of the village claimed that John Bradstreet was riding and tormenting the dog with his spirit. So they killed the dog.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't get how that makes sense, but sure, Salem. Um, and I thought this was pretty interesting. I don't know if you have heard of this. I think it's pretty prevalent now, so people may have. But there's a new theory about the girls that were afflicted, and they believe that they were afflicted due to a fungus in
Yes.
rye bread, which was a staple of the diet at
Yeah.
the time. Yeah. So, eating food with this fungus can cause violent muscle spasms, delusions, vomiting, hallucinations, and crawling sensations on
Ugh,
the skin. Um, PBS said that nearly all of the accusers lived in the western section of Salem Village, a region of swampy meadows that would have been prime breeding ground for the fungus. So while the girls were misguided in their accusations, they may have actually been feeling what they said they were
that's
feeling and just not known what it
wow.
was. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting that obviously they were, misguided in saying that it was witches, but they may have been afflicted
Yeah,
with
that's
something.
crazy.
And that's all I have. Unfortunately, it's a little bit
That's
short.
okay. I still loved it.
Oh my god.
So it's Jessica, and I'm going to be talking about Cleopatra. Anyone who knows me knows that I've had a very unhealthy obsession with ancient Egypt since I was very young. um, the mummy may or may not have contributed to that.
Ugh, I love that movie. It's such a good movie.
So good, Brendan Fraser. Mm.
Brendan Fraser in the day, man.
He was, oh my goodness. My husband will put the movie on for me sometimes when it's on TV, and I just like fawn over Brendan Fraser. He's like, I'm right here. And I'm like, I know. But Brendan Fraser's on the TV. So,
Shh, honey. Brendan
yeah,
Fraser.
exactly. Oh my goodness. So, my sources were history.com, San Jose State University, one of their faculty, Thayer Watkins, did a timeline for Cleopatra.
Hmm.
And then I also used Britannica, and the author for that was Joyce T- Tildesley. I don't know idea.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So this one's kind of lengthy, so I hope it's okay.
Which is perfect because mine was a little short.
That's okay. I still loved yours.
Thanks.
So she was Cleopatra the Seventh, and she was perhaps one of the most well-known Egyptian rulers, and she ruled for almost 3 decades.
Oh, wow. That's a
Yeah,
long time for a ruler.
yeah. So there's reasons behind it. So despite her being an Egyptian ruler, she was actually part of the Macedonian dynasty, find, founded by Ptolemy, who actually served as general for another well-known figure, Alexander the Great.
Oh.
Yeah, which I found really cool. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
So when her father died, the Egyptian throne was passed on to Cleopatra at 18 years old, and her 10-year-old brother Ptolemy the 13th.
Now I have a question,
Yep.
and I don't know if you know this or not, but was it common for a female to be in power back then, or was that like a special thing?
So she was basically just co-regent with all the men that ascended to the throne. So her and her 10-year-old brother actually had to get married. Yeah.
For our listeners, I just made a hideous face.
Yeah, so back then it was actually very common for rulers to marry within the family to keep the royal line together.
I know, but it's still gross.
It is really gross. An 8-year difference.
Oh,
Thankfully, they never had any children together, but
oh God.
it's speculated that her father and mother were brother and sister.
Oh God.
So, yeah. Um,
That gets really confusing. Like, so you're my dad, but also my uncle. You're like my dad, uncle.
yeah, they wanted to keep their bloodline pure, so they would marry within the family.
Mm, don't like it.
I know. Soon after they ascended the throne, Ptolemy's advisors were against Cleopatra, and she was eventually forced to leave Egypt.
Oh.
However, a year later, this badass, sorry, mother, had had raised an army and faced her brother's forces. So she basically was like, no, this isn't right. I'm taking back my
Good
country.
for her.
Um, yeah, so this is actually where our well-known Julius Caesar comes in. Woohoo! At the time, he was in a civil war with another Roman leader, Pompey or Pompey. However, when Pompey fled to Egypt, he was killed.
Oh.
So Ptolemy then invited Caesar to join him at the palace in order to essentially make nice with each other
Mhm.
because he's like, I don't want Caesar as an enemy.
Yeah, you would.
And then, yeah, and Cleopatra's like, I'm gonna seek Caesar's support so I can defeat my brother. So she had herself smuggled. I thought that said snuggled.
Everybody likes a good snuggle, even the Queen of Egypt.
Exactly. So she had herself smuggled into the royal palace in a carpet, which was then unrolled to reveal the 21-year-old Cleopatra for the 52-year-old Julius Caesar, which is a 31-year age gap, if you're wondering.
I don't like that either.
Yeah. My husband and I have a 16-year age difference, but 31 years is a little much.
It's a bit much. That's, like,
But
for sure could be your like, at the high end of could be your dad.
yeah. But I
Like,
mean,
late in life, had a child, could be your
yeah.
dad.
A love has no age limit though, so and
I
I
mean,
mean,
I guess to each their own, as long as it's
yeah.
not, like, with a child, you're both grown adults, to each their
Yeah.
own.
And I mean, it's not like she married like it's not like she
Married
it's
her
not like it was
brother. Oh,
yeah.
wait.
Dang.
Snap!
Yeah. So, despite Cleopatra being beautiful and vivacious, it probably wasn't the only thing that captivated Caesar about her. It was likely to do with the fact that if she was back on the Egyptian throne, she would be incredibly wealthy and he was typically in debt. So, essentially, they were both using each other, and Caesar wished to regain payment of finances because Cleopatra's father had incurred some debt with Caesar, and Cleopatra wished to regain control over Egypt and regain her throne. So they formed this alliance to defeat Cleopatra's brother or slash husband. And after 4 months, they were able to defeat Ptolemy, where he ultimately drowned in the Nile while he was trying to flee the battle.
Oh.
Yeah. So after winning the battle, Caesar returned to Alexandria with Cleopatra, which at the time I believe was the capital city. And he was an unpopular conqueror to the Egyptians, and Cleopatra was an equally unpopular ruler who was now who oh oh okay. I cannot read. I'm so sorry. Um who is now restored to the throne with her younger brother by her side, who was 13 years old.
Wait, I thought
She had
he
more than one
died.
brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was the next youngest brother.
Okay.
Yeah, super fun.
So did they get married?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because she had to ascend the throne with a male beside her, so she had to marry her brother.
Lame.
Yeah, so Cleopatra and Caesar were lovers during this time, and they continue to be for some time, which ended up with Cleopatra giving birth to a son who she named Ptolemy Caesar or Caesarion, which means Little Caesar.
Oh.
Despite his name implying the fact, it was never known for fact that he was Caesar's child or not, which seems weird, but oh well. During the next 2 years, Caesar went off to destroy some more enemies because that's what they did. Um, it was the Pompeian opposition, which was he had defeated Pompey, who was the leader of the Pompeian opposition, but
Mhm.
his sons were also kind of rising against him. So he then returned back to Rome in 46 BCE, which is so long ago.
Wait, I'm sorry. So Caesar's sons were rising up against him or Pompey's
Pompey's sons.
sons? Okay.
Yeah.
And so Pompey returned back to
Yeah, so they basically
Okay.
decided that they wanted a round with Caesar, so Caesar naturally went and fought them and defeated them.
Gotcha. Okay.
So Cleopatra, her brother husband, and
Eh.
her son, Caesarion, visited Caesar in Rome during this time after he beat all these people, where he gave order to have a gold statue of Cleopatra erected in the temple of Venus Genetrix or Aphrodite in case you know your Greek goddess is better, which is me.
I want a gold statue made after me.
Yeah,
Holy
so
crap.
it was, like, brutal because she's this Egyptian ruler, and Caesar erecting a gold statue in one of their temples of her.
Is that bad?
That's very bad.
Oh,
Yeah, like, it's a temple for a Roman goddess, and then you're erecting a statue of an Egyptian ruler that people don't like.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So not
I
good.
feel like I'm sorry to my listeners out there. I am not usually this dumb. I have I first I've been dealing with horrendous migraines, so my brain is foggy, and now I'm on medicine that's like making me really loopy. So I am really sorry.
It's okay. It helps me because then I get to explain better if I'm not already doing a great job.
You probably are, and listeners are probably like, "Ashley, shut up."
Well, that's not very nice, so I'll defend you, boo.
Thanks.
You're so Caesar was super cocky since he had achieved victory over his enemies, and he even went as far as declaring himself a god.
Oh.
And I have in brackets men, am I right? Oh man, okay. So the Senate didn't agree with Caesar's thoughts. And so in 44 BCE, so 2 years later, they made a plan to assassinate him. And his friends were involved in this.
At 2 Brute?
Yeah. So 60 senators were involved in this plot against Caesar's life. The leaders in this attempt were Marcus Brutus, Gaius Cassius, and Decimus Brutus. And I tried looking it up. I don't think that Marcus and Decimus are related.
Mm.
So, but all I got were Shakespeare references. So I have no
Gotcha.
idea. They feared Caesar's power-hungry nature was undermining the Roman Republic, so they decided to act during a Senate meeting on the Ides of March, which is the 15th day of March and a notable date for the Romans for settling debts.
Oh,
Ironic.
yeah. Okay.
So, yeah. These lovely individuals stabbed Caesar 23 times, which
Whew.
is a bit much, but it
Yeah.
got the job done. So I'm sure they were
I
happy
mean, I
about
guess
it.
if you're trying to take down Caesar, like, you wanna really make sure you get him.
Well, especially because he's a god, right? So
Right.
takes a little bit more to murder this man. Despite murdering him, they were still unable to restore the institutions of the Republic. So essentially, this was all for nothing, and they murdered their friend just for a power hungry trip, and they still didn't accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. So
Well, alright.
sucks to be
Poor Caesar.
Caesar.
Although I do feel if someone is saying that they're a god, like, probably only bad things are gonna happen after that. Like, as far as, like, if he was still in power the way he was, it probably would have gotten out of hand. Not saying that
Oh,
any
probably,
murder is
probably.
justified, but
No, but I mean, they thought it was justified, but oh well. So it's believed that Cleopatra was still in Rome when Caesar was assassinated. And so, due to this, she fled back to Alexandria in order to keep herself and her son safe. When she returned to Egypt with her family, her brother husband died, more than likely from her ordering someone to murder him.
I
So,
thought you were gonna say something like more than likely from disease or like
no, no, it's believed that she had him ordered to be killed.
that's just not where I thought that was going.
No. Well, I mean, expect the unexpected with her because she's she's something else. I like her. But her son, now 3 years old, became co-regent with his mother over Egypt at this time. So she was feeling pretty secure at this point now that her son was technically ruling.
So it didn't matter like who the man was. It just had to be a man of royal blood.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, thankfully she didn't have to marry her son, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So he became co-regent because he was so young. So now Yet another civil war was occurring in Rome because they like their civil wars there apparently back then. And this time, the very well known Mark Antony was involved, and he required Cleopatra's assistance, financially, of course.
Of course.
And she needed yet another strong Roman leader to protect her now that Caesar was deceased. And Mark Antony was at this point the heir apparent of Caesar's great nephew, Octavian. So Octavian basically took over Caesar's duties, but I think because he was younger, that Mark Antony was his appointed heir,
Okay.
like to kind of watch over him, but I could be very wrong. I could be very wrong. But from reading it, from reading things and I've seen so many movies about her and this whole story, like that seems to be the case, is that he basically was like a guardian over him.
Gotcha. Well, nobody else look it up and just take our word for
And don't message me if I'm wrong, or do, because
it.
I like to learn, but be nice about it.
Be nice about it.
I'm very sensitive.
Well, so far the messages we have received are very sweet and we appreciate them all so much.
Oh, they've been so nice and they make our day, so please keep them coming and
Oh, we love it. We always message each other like, "Oh my gosh, did you see we got another follower? Oh my gosh, did you see so and so
yeah, we
messaged
really appreciate it,
us?"
so please keep it up. We really appreciate everyone that has followed us so far and has taken the time to give us their recommendations or advice on how to do better. So we are taking that advice in stride and trying to do better for all of you. So yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
really
love it.
appreciate it. So um
Sorry, that was a tangent. Back to Cleopatra.
that's okay. I'm okay with it. And I'm sure people are happy to be spoken about. So so after deploying the Roman troops from a spot in Egypt to assist Antony's siege, Cleopatra was then summoned to Tarsus by Mark Antony for a meeting.
Now, is this a meeting or a meeting?
Um, I'll let you decide.
Okay.
So, after meeting Cleopatra, however, he gave up all of his ideas of invasion and returned with her in Alexandria, leaving his wife at home in Italy.
So it was a meeting.
Yep. So, Cleopatra gave birth to twins.
Oh.
They're Mark Antony's. So, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, who were the children of Mark Antony, which I just said because I like to repeat myself. Oh. Having already returned to Rome at this point and his previous wife in Italy was dying, Antony was required to make a settlement with Octavian and marry Octavian's sister, whose name was creatively Octavia.
Oh.
Octavian and Octavia.
That would be confusing.
I really like the name Octavia, though. It's very pretty.
Yeah, that is really pretty. Isn't there's an actress, right?
Yeah, Octavia Spencer.
Yeah, I wanted to say Octavia Spencer, and then, like,
Yeah.
my stupid migraine medicine-induced brain was like, "No, that's not right." Yeah,
That's so
it's a
funny.
really I like how unique it is and pretty.
Yeah, exactly. And
And I
she's a
like
great
her,
actress,
she's
so
awesome.
yeah, exactly. Shout out Octavia.
If you're listening, I
Oh, we would be so
would die.
bl
I would
oh,
die.
yeah. So despite this arrangement where Antony had to marry Octavia, Antony and Octavia could never come to terms, and so Antony returned east and reunited with his beloved Cleopatra. Well, no, Cleopatra, not Cleopatra. Thinking Octavia. So they go such a long time without seeing each other, and I think I'd go crazy if I was part of this because they literally go years without seeing each other. It's
Oh,
insane.
wow.
Yeah. And I mean, Egypt and Rome are a distance.
Yeah.
When Antony returned to Egypt, things hit the fan.
Uh-oh.
Since he illegally married Cleopatra, even though he was still married to Octavia, technically.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, yes. Um, it gets better. He proclaimed Caesarion to be Caesar's legitimate son, therefore making Octavian's right to the throne illegitimate.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. He then bestowed honors onto all the children, essentially hoping to take over the civilized world, which kind of threatened Rome.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised that um Octavian and Octavia let Caesarion live. Like, I'm surprised they
Hmm.
didn't try and assassinate him, or maybe they did try and just didn't succeed.
Yeah, I never read anything about it anywhere, and I'm not sure if they just like didn't know about him up to that point,
Gotcha.
but we kind of get into it a little bit
Okay.
more. Um, so in response to this, Octavian obtained what he stated was Antony's will and essentially told the population that he was bestowing Roman gifts to Cleopatra and her family, these Egyptians, and that he even wanted to be buried next to his foreigner thing.
Wait, can you say that word again?
What word?
Where you put someone under the ground?
Buried? What?
I say it's probably the like country difference, but we say buried.
Oh,
I'm
I don't know.
sorry, it just caught me off guard. I was like,
I mean,
buried.
I say it both ways. Just he wanted to be buried. I don't know. I spelled it like buried, so my notes. So that's how I said it.
I'm gonna cut this out so people don't hear me making fun of you, but
No, I like it. Make fun of me. Okay. The Romans then declared a war on Cleopatra. Surprise, surprise. Which was an absolute disaster for the Egyptians because they weren't very great at war. While Cleopatra hid away, Antony went off to fight in the battle where he received false news that Cleopatra had died. So I'm unaware of the accuracy of this, as I only found it on one source, but it is said that Cleopatra was the one who sent the letter to Antony indicating that she had died, so
Oh.
her and Octavian could make peace.
Oh.
So Octavian essentially said, "Tell him you died, and then we'll figure shit out." Sorry, Mom. After Antony found out this news, he then fell onto his sword to kill himself because
Oh
he's
my
like, I cannot live
gosh.
without the love of my life.
Wow, they're so dramatic back then.
Yeah. So he then had himself carried to her retreat because he found out, hey, yeah, she's actually alive. So he's like, carry me to her, bring me to my love, my one and only. So,
Carry me to her.
so, so when he was there with her, he asked her to make peace with Octavian before perishing himself.
Which she had already done.
Well, sorta. So the tragedy is far from over at this point. After burying after burying Antony, Cleopatra then committed suicide herself.
What?
So it was rumored again that she truly knew that her and Octavian could never work anything out. So she sent her children away to safety and then killed herself.
Wow. So if she
Yeah.
knew that though, why would she have sent that letter to
Well,
Antony in the first
she
place?
didn't she really didn't like feel it at first, and then like based off of how things were going, she's like, shoot, like I guess this isn't really gonna work. So
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah. So it's largely believed and usually depicted this way that she used an Egyptian asp to kill herself because they're extremely poisonous.
An Egyptian what?
Asp. So it's ASP. It's a snake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like a black snake. They're very poisonous. So it's largely believed, and again, like worldly depicted, that that's how she killed herself. However, the story cannot be confirmed because obviously, like, not many people were there.
Right.
So, because she basically barricaded herself, sent her children away to safety, and then because she didn't want her children being killed by Octavian, right? So,
Gotcha. Yeah, especially
um,
if she wasn't there to protect them.
yeah, exactly. And she knew that she'd be captured and killed or worse, right? So
Mhm.
she just wanted to die on her own terms. So she died at the young age of 39. I almost said 89.
The young age of 89, just a young whippersnapper.
Yeah, so she died at 39. She had ruled Egypt for 22 years.
Wow.
So since she was 17 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. She had been with Antony for 11 years, and the two of them are buried together as they had requested, which honestly, thank goodness, something good came out of this whole debacle.
So she was with Julius Caesar for a little bit, but Mark Antony was like the love of her life.
Yeah. So they were together for 11 years, which was pretty cool. And thankfully, they got to be buried next to each other, and
That's
something
sweet.
good came out of that. So,
Yeah, that's sweet.
and that's the story of Cleopatra. But I do have some fun facts if you want to hear.
Of course I want to hear them.
Okay. So, like I said earlier, she was the product of incest,
Mhm. Mhm.
and she was required to marry two of her brothers.
Mhm.
Her beauty was not her biggest asset. She spoke as many as a dozen languages, and
Wow.
she was very well educated. Yes. She was also not believed to be as beautiful as many believe her to be nowadays.
Well, so I was just looking up like pictures of her, and they
Hmm.
have like clay representations of her face, and yeah, it's not as pretty as I was expecting.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, there were many coins with her face on it, and they had manly features and a hooked nose,
Mhm.
which wasn't, which isn't typically the standard look of beauty in society, right?
Mhm.
But so they think that people were really invested in her and so interested in her because of her smarts and her wiles.
Gotcha.
So,
Well, go her.
yeah. Oh yeah, she was great. But a lot of people also theorize that the reason she looked this way on the coins was so that she could assert herself more and come off as more powerful if she looked more manly.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's kind of unsure as to like what she really looked like, but it was just like a show of strength or if that's actually what she looked like. So,
Gotcha.
she also had a hand in the deaths of three of her siblings. So, for her first two brothers slash husbands, and also her sister,
Oh.
which I didn't think was interesting enough to mention. But yeah, she had her sister killed as well.
Why? Do you know?
Yeah, because she was worried that she's gonna go for the throne.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was competition essentially. So she had her killed. Cleopatra and Antony also formed their own drinking club.
I love that.
Yeah, so according to ancient sources, they lived a life of leisure and excess in Egypt and formed a drinking committee called the Inimitable Livers. They had nightly feasts and wine binges, and even sometimes members took part in crazy games and contests. Apparently, their favorite activity was wandering the streets in disguises and playing pranks on the residents. Yeah.
I mean, the feast and wine fest sound pretty legit. I'd be down for that.
Yeah. So that was their favorite pastime, apparently. But, anyways, that is my story on Cleopatra.
I loved it.
Yeah, hopefully it was interesting enough. I feel like I kind of rushed through it, but
No, it was super interesting. And again, I'm sorry to everyone for my short story. I've just really been struggling with my migraine. So um next week, I promise, will be a longer story from me.
yay. So, Ashley, did you want to plug our social media?
Nope. I'm just
Okay.
kidding. I'm just kidding. So we are on Facebook as Histories and Mysteries, with an ampersand. So Histories ampersand Mysteries. You can also find us on Instagram, and we are Histories and Mysteries spelled out. So Histories and Mysteries.
Because
And you,
Instagram doesn't like symbols.
yeah, yeah. I really liked the ampersand, and I was like really pushing for it, but like nothing uses it other than Facebook, so I kind of lost that battle. But um,
That's okay.
and then you can email us at historiesandmysteries515 at gmail.com.
Woohoo! Yeah, email us stories if you have them or recommendations, anything you can think of.
Yeah. I'm so proud of myself. I didn't think I would get all that. That's why I said no at first. I was like, oh crap.
I know, I'm so proud of you. I had all of them open over here just in case, but I'm so proud of you.
All right.
Okay,
Well, we
well
hope.
that
What?
let's just say, well, that's our show.
Oh, I was just saying, we hope you enjoyed our show. We got to work on this ending.
Okay. Okay, you go again.
Okay. Well, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. Well, we hope you enjoyed our show, and we'll see you next time. Well, nope,
Bye,
we
guys.
won't see them. Well, we hope you enjoyed. Well, we hope you enjoyed our show, and we'll look. What do I say?
And we'll be in your ears next week. We
How
look
about just
forward to
Okay, how about this? We hope you enjoyed our show, and we look forward to bringing you 2 new stories next week.
Yay, so excited. Thanks for listening.
Bye.